All
Welcome
right.
to Hello, welcome to the Dr. Laurie Marbas podcast. I'm Dr. Laurie Marbas, and today I'm so honored to have Mike the vegan, YouTuber, influencer, just incredibly intelligent human with a great spokesmanship about him. So, welcome to our show, and thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here in
Thank
my
you so
house and with you.
Yes, and in my small apartment here. So if you could tell us, just a little bit, I will do intros that people will hear, I'm sure, before we get to this
Mhm.
conversation. But you have a really growing YouTube channel, and it's really good. Like I was referred to you by Happy Healthy Vegan, Ryan,
Friends.
and they are incredible. And I was watching your videos; they're phenomenal. And so I would like to know, just kind of before we get to the YouTube channel in itself, what led you to become a vegan, or have you always been a vegan? Like, how did all this start?
Well, I grew up eating meat, so like standard, well, not quite standard omnivore, pretty close to it. My parents didn't eat red meat, which was sort of unique. But other than that, I was still eating chicken, fish, dairy, eggs, all that stuff. And then somebody sort of just handed me the China study, and I read it. And I wasn't like, oh, all of this epidemiology in China was what made me go vegan. No, it was all the other stuff because everyone's always has all the nitpicks of the China study itself, the actual study, but all the things in there, things about heart disease and cancer and things like that, just got me to just immediately go vegan that day.
Mm.
Like I read it on a road trip, and just the next restaurant I went to was just vegan, and so that was the point where I was like doing it. I was afraid of the I gotta eat animal protein aspect, so I had fish like a couple times, but that was like 8 years ago. So it took me maybe like 4 or 5 months to transition fully. I was like a vegan plus the occasional fear-based fish, or like fish due to fear. It was like animal protein, need it, and fish like they tell me it's the healthiest, and so that's how it kind of happened, and then
Wow.
found more and more information as well.
So that's been 8 years.
Yeah, it's been about 8 years.
Okay. Very cool. So then now you kind of entered this journey into the YouTube. Tell me how that started and how you decided to take the approach to sharing this information and really calling out people who don't necessarily use evidence-based
Mhm.
discussions on YouTube, which we'll get to in a minute. But can you tell me what led you down that path? Because it's fascinating.
Well, when I started the channel, I was never planning on like calling people out. I guess I didn't think I wasn't going to do it, but I originally started it just because I was doing a ton of research to just defend my own diet. Because I was like, once I learned why we don't need animal protein, I'd be like, oh, I need to be able to explain this really well to people. And in order to be persuasive and not seem like I'm just pulling stuff out of my butt, I need to actually have good sources. And so I went and just did a bunch of research, like I said, to defend myself. And then eventually a few people were like, you should just like say what you just said on YouTube. And so I was kind of in the back of my mind of starting a YouTube channel. And then finally I was pushed over the edge by this girl who was like, I'm not going to go vegan because one person can't make a difference. And I was like, I'm going to make a difference. And so that pushed me over the edge. And I just decided to start the channel. And
Wow. And that was how long ago?
oh gosh, it's been like 3 years now. Yeah.
3 years. But you've grown. So you have almost, what,
Yeah,
250,000
I have over
subscribers.
250,000 subscribers, which is good.
That's really cool.
Yeah, very
So
great.
what I really appreciate is that you also link your resources,
Mhm.
very similar to a Gregor type sort of.
Although he doesn't actually always link all of his studies in the description, which
Oh, did you? I haven't checked every
yeah,
video, but
yeah, I should
really?
look. I should look in a bit.
Ah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
just
yeah.
remember I because it's I always have to type in his titles, which is okay. Like it's
Yeah.
one more thing to work. But I just remember like the first video I ever made, people were like, "You gotta link your descriptions. Like it's totally unacceptable to not link your descriptions." It's like, and I just thought, okay, of course I have to. And so since then, I've done every single video, and
Wow.
I'm one of the only people on YouTube that does it. So
Yeah, no, I think that's really good because then this is a great resource to send people to and say, okay, I have physicians, for example, just someone tagged me on a comment. Someone said they were discussing olive oil and someone
mhm.
mentioned hashtag olive oil is good for you. They stopped a study on purpose because it was unethical. And I'm like, my comment was, well, we're linked to the study and
Yeah,
I'd be happy to
and they
talk
don't
to you
know.
about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like 10 people, and it's not even what they were talking about. But usually
Exactly.
it happens. So I like to quote directly from the study when possible, have it on the screen so people can, in case the link is broken, they can Google it and then also have the link. So that's my goal.
And so how are you, I guess because you're also studying for your MPH, right?
Hmm.
Okay. And do you get access to these studies through your university?
I actually do, but a lot of times they're open studies that I look at, not all of them.
Mhm.
And sometimes I mean, if you listen to Dr. Greger, he says go on Sci-Hub, and I'm sure you have a lot of
I
people are
have
like,
been to
you would go to
Sci-Hub.
it. Yeah, Sci-Hub. So Sci-Hub can be a little bit sketchy. I mean, there's an argument to be made for and against it. The argument
Mhm.
for it would just be that journals are just absolutely taking advantage of their position, or they're taking advantage of their name and making it completely inaccessible, and the money's not going to the researchers, because the argument against it is you're stealing money from the researchers, or the researchers aren't getting paid now.
Mhm.
And so that I need to look into it more to really decide what the best, whether it is an issue for the researchers. But from what I've heard, it's not a researcher problem. It's a big name journal issue where they're losing the money. So that's
It's
what I heard.
actually a commercial publisher issue.
Commercial publisher.
So,
Yeah. There you
yes,
go.
coming from the point of just publishing or just
Yeah.
launching a journal, I
Mhm.
did the last 9 months was research on all this, so I
Mhm.
can tell you about it. It's a $10 billion industry.
Wow.
Majority of that is made by the commercial publishers, and
It
there's
doesn't go back into new research.
no.
No. So there you go. That's the argument.
And these are for-profit entities.
Mm.
And when we approached them with our journal, which is focused on plant-based nutrition and research and things like that, we were flat out told no. However, Wiley did court us for a few months, but then they
Mm.
kind of dropped us suddenly. But anyway, the my thought on this is one, I'm a tax-paying individual. And I would hope that
Mm.
my tax dollars, because these are going, I'm sure, to the NIH, that's where they
Yep.
get their money, is
Yep.
going to fund a lot of this research. I should have access to it.
Yep.
And the researchers are doing, they have to apply for funding. They're getting their funding from government grants, typically, or private, entities. Again, if you're, for example, the Bill Gates, Melinda Gates Foundation, they
Mhm.
require that people actually publish in an open access journal
Wow,
because
that
they
makes
want,
sense. Yeah.
yeah, makes sense. But yeah, the publishers don't. The publishers make the money, not the societies. The societies function typically off membership subscription,
Mhm.
which then also allows those members to have access to the journal. Otherwise, there's no money filtering back. It's
Mhm.
interesting.
I
Yeah,
would say it's kind of analogous to you pay taxes for a road, and then a private company goes along and puts a toll on that road.
exactly.
That's kind of what's going on.
Yep, that's exactly right. So
Mhm.
there you go.
And so Sci-Hub is sort of just a free little entry that somebody built onto the road or something.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, yeah, it's like someone hijacked a road and built a dirt path to get to it. So
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly. Yeah. So
bypassing all the
it's yeah,
cameras.
it's hard to say I mean, it's hard to make a case against Sci-Hub being ethical, and so
Right. That's
maybe
true.
there are situations where it does hurt people, but the vast majority it doesn't. I mean, people need to learn as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and the other thought on that as well that I know Dr. Williams, who I work with, Dr. Kim Williams brought up being open access is these other countries that don't have the wealth and the resources that we do.
Yep.
And they, these are burgeoning possible research organizations and, physicians or scientists, and they don't have access to that
Mm,
information. So again, it's about the more knowledge that's available, open, the better. So,
for sure. For
yeah.
sure.
So tell me, what is some of your favorite topics to talk about on here? Because you have such a wide variety of videos.
That's a hard one. I end up just making whatever people ask me to make at this point. I'm like 98 or 90% recommended video or requested video. And so it seems to be a lot of times I end up talking about like low carb diets, whether that's keto or all meat diet or whatever, Atkins or all that stuff. So that's something I end up talking about a lot. I also just like talking about sort of the magical power of plants or just like reversing diseases on a whole food vegan diet. I tend to talk about the circulatory system a lot, I've noticed, and that's just because of how many diseases are connected to it. Like, I just did a video on joints, and it's kind of all about the circulatory system, which you wouldn't think it would be. And so that's definitely like one of my passions is like clearing out your circulatory system.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you approach someone when they give you a new topic? Like, how do you even begin to know like where to go look for research, or how do you begin that research process?
Sometimes I get a little lucky. Like somebody requested a few videos back, like, oh, do the true cost of meat. And I was like, I know exactly who I need. I need David Simon, who wrote Meatonomics. And I was able to like, get him for the next videos. I was able to do an interview and release the video next week, which was really lucky. And
Oh,
so
cool.
sometimes there's just like people that can help. Um, otherwise it's just, I just go into like a fugue state of researching every possible study on the topic that somebody wants. Like on joints, basically joints and atherosclerosis. I would just look at all the studies on joints and atherosclerosis and see what was like a meaningful thing or meaningful quote to throw in. And I just like outline my videos that way and try and, I try and get like 10 studies at least in every video like that. Not every video period, but every video that like has a case that needs to be made for sure.
So then how do you decide how to structure your video? Like, because they're actually really entertaining too, right? Because you have commentary thrown in along. I mean, you're like a producer, like I don't know, like an editor or whatever they
Yeah,
want.
I guess like
Director.
everything. I'm the full team. I mean, honestly, I kind of outline the video and then I'll usually like think of a joke as I'm filming it. And then I'll be like, all right, I just got to throw this wig on and say it and do it. And so that's how it works for me, really. It's kind of off the cuff.
So there are videos with wigs.
There are videos with wigs, yeah. Like I did the detox one, or that was like 5 nutrition myths. And one of the myths is like around detoxing in general. And I made up a character called Detox Dina. It's very, yeah, pretty ridiculous. So
That's awesome. So in your real life, outside of your YouTube, what do you do? I mean, you're studying. Are you just a student full time? What else do you do?
honestly, YouTube is my job at this point. Also building a tiny house, which takes a lot of time, doing the master's in public health, and then sort of filming a documentary about the pig farming in Iowa, where I live right now,
Oh, wow.
because we produce the most pigs out of any state.
Really?
And the second and third state combined. Yeah, and so it's a crazy issue. It's a huge local issue right now. Like they just had a town hall meeting in my town of 300 people showed up, or just like a meeting about the hog confinements. And so it's crazy just in terms of how it's affecting people's quality of life before you even get into the pig aspect and the ethical aspect. I mean, first of all, there's a lot of studies showing that it does negatively impact the health of people that live nearby these factory farms. And that is huge, but there's just complete denial of it by the county supervisors who have control over the new CAFOs coming in, and the farmers themselves and everybody that supports it. It's crazy. Like you can go, like I went and read a study in a court, in like a kind of open community forum in the courthouse, local courthouse. And I read a study from the Journal of Epidemiology saying that, these pig farms in particular are related to acute physical symptoms. And then one of the next guys that gets up is, well, you have your science, but I think it's all relative. Like the science is relative, and like it smells good to me, and essential oils smell bad to me. So I'm going to go around telling you not to use essential oils. Literally, that was the argument again, why they should be able to pig farm. Blows my mind. They just don't, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
So it's just like brush it under the carpet and okay, young man, off you go.
Yeah. Well, it was me and 200 other people probably.
Oh, wow.
100 other people saying what I'm saying.
Wow. Yeah. And so tell me a little bit about where you are in your community and what type of things are people saying that how their health is actually being affected.
Well, we've had situations in Iowa where like there's somebody like a grandma who's like 85 or 90 and she's never had asthma her whole life. And then like a 2,000 or 3,000 head CAFO, which is a concentrated animal feeding operation, which is a pig farm, will move in and then she'll get asthma at like age 90. And it's like, obviously she didn't just get asthma. And then there's of course the hydrogen sulfide issue, which hydrogen sulfide is emitted from the manure lagoons underneath these. And that has effects associated with like 7 times the risk of neurological symptoms like tremors and stuff. So that's one aspect, but then mainly it's like a respiratory issue as well. And there's the endotoxins, which are from the bacteria in the manure and the ammonia. And actually a lot of these go over the state limit of the air in concentration of hydrogen sulfide. So we have DNR, which is, the Natural Resources official government organization, measuring about half of what they measured around these CAFOs was over the limit, and they just don't do anything about it.
Interesting. What it's funny is that DNR in medicine means do not resuscitate.
Oh yeah. Well, that's how they feel about our community right now.
So as far as the action, so you said you're starting a documentary. Are you doing it all by yourself? Do you have other people helping?
Yeah, it's a mini doc. It's pretty chill. Like I'm kind of going around getting drone footage and talking to people. Basically, I want to keep it like 20-ish minutes, and not that intense because I make a video once a week no matter what, and so I don't have that much time to make a crazy documentary. So I'm kind of just trying to get people's view on it, local people's view on it. I'm going to hit some of the environmental stuff. I'm going to hit some of the ethical stuff, and yeah. So it's gonna be like one third people, one third ethical, and one third environmental, basically.
So springing up the environmental aspects. So what have you found in locally that's environmental impact or others? Like I know in North Carolina from like What to Health and
Oh yeah,
you're seeing them spray.
they spray here too. Yeah.
Really? So
Yep.
can you explain why they're doing that and what for those who aren't familiar?
Oh, well, they have thousands and thousands and thousands of gallons of manure in these manure pits, and they need something to do with it. Technically, on paper, it's a fertilizer. It's got a lot of nitrogen in it, but it's also super toxic. I know, at least in chicken manure, there's decently high concentrations of lead. And of course, you've got the antibiotics in this. And so they just spray it everywhere, and it can create respiratory issues. And I believe that what the health aspect was looking at cancer. Maybe I'm completely wrong about that, but just spraying toxins into the air. They kind of just spray it, and it kind of becomes sort of aerosolized, if that's even a word, but it gets in the air, and it's already in the air coming out of these fans. Like it's so bad. The air in these farms are so bad that if they don't have giant fans going, so every so often the pigs just die, like because it's so toxic, and so it's bad stuff. I mean, there's a lot of negative aspects. It's also a ton of the waterways in my state, and I'm sure all around the US, are considered impaired. They have really high levels of nitrogen, which creates blooms of algae, which emit a neurotoxin called BMAA, which is linked to ALS. I have that in my ALS video, which is Lou Gehrig's disease. It's also what Stephen Hawking had. And so that's sketchy. We don't want that at all. Mm-hmm. And just in general, like the E. coli is rampant. There's a huge risk of antimicrobial resistant infection, antibiotic resistant infection, whatever you want to call it. For example, MRSA is something that we have in Iowa in these farms. And it's a staph infection, which is really dangerous. It kills about 10,000 people a year, according to the CDC. And that is there's no better place to accelerate the evolution of that than within hog confinement, where there's, an animal that's pretty similar to humans, and they're just tightly packed, and there's no hygiene, and it's bad. It's really bad.
Yeah, antibiotic resistance is a big concern. And I know even MRSA now, used to be in the hospitals, and now it's in the community where people can spread it. And we had I used to live in Colorado. I live in Washington State now. We had a young kid who was 17. So my kids are all grown now. But when this was in 2013, 14 in there, we had a young kid come in with flu. He ended up dying within 24 hours because he had a MRSA pneumonia. And healthy kid, otherwise dead within 24 hours. And
how long was he infected before that, you think?
With the MRSA, I'm sure he was a carrier. Yeah. I'm sure. Yeah, because he was a wrestler and basketball player. So, all my kids are athletes. So, they're just gross, especially boys. But
how long so it took 24 hours for him to die from the
yeah.
How long do you think he had it before that?
He became ill literally, and with the time he got ill, within 24 hours it was gone.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I thought it was 24 hours the time he was presenting to the hospital.
No, he just wasn't feeling well, and it was such a rapid onset because it's such an aggressive infection. And this is a healthy person, scared to death. I mean, you see these things in person, and you're just like, oh my goodness. And but yeah, it's concerning. Another one is C-Diff, right? Associated with taking antibiotics. So imagine if you're consuming these low doses of antibiotics that they use to grow the animals or whatever. C-Diff now, it kills 30,000 Americans every year, 500,000 hospitalizations. I've had 4 cases in just my own practice this year of patients. Yeah, it's so frightening. There was one case, it was a parent of a child. The child had it, and then the parent got it. Was not even taking antibiotics. Scary. And a third of those cases are resistant to treatment. Wow. So anyway.
And I'm sure that can only be made worse by the animal farming. I'd have to look into that because MRSA was something we had locally more. But maybe I got to look into it. Yeah,
C-Diff would be a great. So I'm going to start. I know who to go to now. I'm going to start commenting and say, hey.
Make a video about this. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I will do it. Yeah, maybe that's what my next video. It's actually kind of crazy because a lot of times it's Wednesday night and I make a video on Thursday and I release it on Thursday and I don't know what I'm making a video on the next day. And so Thursday is just panic mode for me. And so I don't know what I'm making a video about on Thursday, day after tomorrow. And so maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do antimicrobial.
So you really do all your research and the video all in one day?
That's the worst case scenario. I try to do it all throughout the week and then like a lot of ones I don't. Like the last video was all Thursday.
Wow. Well, that is a very good video. So I'm curious, what is your goal now with the MPH? Like, what are you wanting to accomplish by getting that?
One was I wanted to be able to do studies, which it would be really fun, and I'd love to brainstorm with you
Yeah,
right after this
you
about
bet.
cool studies to do. But I just felt like, I mean, you could probably do a study as anybody, but when you have an MPH, it's a little bit more credible. And so
Yeah.
having that, and then it's what I'm doing on YouTube all the time is talking about health. And my background is in like a bachelor's of science in sustainability, environmental type
Oh, cool.
sustainability. And so I've spent like thousands of hours looking at journals and reading about public health kind of accidentally just out of interest. And so now it's time. It was like, now it's time to just go for it,
Yeah,
because it's better to
absolutely.
have that under my belt for sure. Especially talking about the stuff, like I'm not trying to be a nutritionist. I do talk about nutrition, but I
Mhm.
end up talking about what sort of like the best, the kind of best conclusion is to draw about a public health issue. And so I end up talking about public health, like I said, by accident.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, 80% of our chronic disease would improve dramatically should
Mm-hmm.
we switch over. I mean, it was the China study, actually, the China study that got me, well, it was actually a patient. And then I Googled China
Mm-hmm.
study was the first book I read literally in 2 days because I was so like, what? Turning off cancer? What?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. That was rats
Have
too.
I been killing my patients
Oh my gosh, yeah.
and my own family? So speaking of personally, do you have, are you married? Any children? Anything like that?
Nope.
Ah, you can say you got lots of time, but you're building a tiny house, so it sounds like some
Well, I have
minimalism.
yeah, I have me and my girlfriend are building the tiny house.
Oh,
And
that's so
so
cool.
yeah, it's pretty chill. It's somewhat minimalist. I mean, we haven't gotten to the minimalist part yet. I mean, once we get into the tiny house, then it'll be minimalist. Only so much can fit in there, so that's going to be interesting.
So, what made you decide to move towards minimalism or build a house? Even that's a big step.
My girlfriend was just like, "I want a tiny house," and I was like, "Do we really want to do this?" And then we actually, instead of spending like $6,000 on a trailer, we just grabbed an old RV and I tore down the trailer because it was like a few $100s instead of $5,000. We didn't know if we really wanted to do it, and then we got going in it, and we welded the trailer out to 8.5 feet, which is the maximum because it's on wheels, the maximum road width without an oversized load situation. And we just started going in it, and I just like kept building it, and now it's almost like we're insulating it on Thursday. It's being spray foamed, and so it's going to be
Wow,
done ish pretty soon. Totally
that
done on the
is
outside.
sorry, that is really cool. So, as far as what is your goals with it? Are you going to travel the country? Are you going to
No
stay
idea.
put?
We have no idea. Like we might take it down to like Austin just to like experience that, and maybe to the West Coast. It depends on how easy it is to pull, because we
Mm,
built it really light but really tall and as wide as possible. And so if it's a major wind hazard for tipping over, like it's just not going to be worth it to just move a lot.
I see.
That's yeah.
Cool. So, how many square feet are you going to end up having?
It's 8 feet by 24 feet with an extra 2 inch overhang. So it's kind of like 200 square feet. But then it has two lofts that are like another 60 square feet each. So
Wow.
it's like 300 ish. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, we so we had up to 7 people in our house at one point. I have 3 kids, and then my
Mm-hmm.
husband and my in-laws lived with us. We went
Mm-hmm.
from 3,000 square foot after we're now empty nesters down to less than
Mm-hmm.
1,000 square foot house,
Oh,
like
well, that's
apartment,
great. Mm-hmm.
and got rid of so many things. Don't even have a
Mm-hmm.
television anymore, and now we want to do one more.
Oh, wow. Because I was going to say that's actually probably more square foot per person than you had in your 3,000 square foot. You had over 3 times as many people.
Yeah,
Well, that's
yeah,
about equal. It's about equal square footage.
yeah, probably. But then when the kids come home for summers or breaks,
Mm-hmm.
it's it's cozy though, but it's fine because we're out doing stuff anyway. But yeah, we're doing one more. But the thing was all the stuff. Been
Mm-hmm.
married for 25
Getting
years. This
rid
was a
of it.
lot of
Oh,
stuff.
wow. That could be hard. Be
It
really
was
hard.
interesting. So I really am curious though, what do you eat in a day?
What do I eat in a day? Oh, I always wake up and I end up having my oatmeal. Like it's so boring for people. So that's like why I don't do like what I eat in a day more. But I wake up, I have my oatmeal, which is steel cut oats that they already put in the instant pot the night before, so they're done when I wake up. And then I throw some frozen blueberries in, some cinnamon, whatever fruit I have on hand, usually like apples or bananas. And if I remember to, I put ground flax in, but I guess I don't always remember to do that, which is probably a vicious cycle. Like you don't remember to do it, and then your brain gets worse, and then you don't. No, I'm sure it's fine. And then sometimes I'll do like Ezekiel sort of like cereal too, which is sort of like a whole wheat cereal, which is extra crunchy. And then for lunch, it's like so many possibilities. It's impossible like to figure out exactly what. I mean, usually I do like one go to that probably eat too much is like khichdi. So brown
It's what?
rice, khichdi. Khichdi
Kitchen.
is like half rice, half lentils, all in a
Oh,
pot,
okay.
or sort of like a stew. And so red lentils, brown rice with just a bunch of veggies in there is how it goes. So you got your grain, you got your legume, you got your veggies, just throw it all in. It's super simple. In the Instant Pot, it's like 22 minutes on high pressure, which after pressurized is like half an hour. You don't have to watch it. And so that's like I'm trying to get stuff done. That's what I make. And I always make like a lot of burrito-y things. Trying to get more into like soaking and cooking like pinto beans because they just taste better that way than from the can.
Mm.
And so I just make a lot of meal. Usually I just make a meal that has starch and a legume, which is pretty starchy still too, but starch, legume, and veggies. And so, maybe potatoes and black beans and a bunch of veggies and stuff like that.
Making me hungry. I want to.
Yeah, nice.
Do you do a lot of like different ethnic foods and stuff? Because my husband's Filipino, so we love all sorts of ethnic foods.
Actually, me and my friends get together like almost every Sunday and we have a vegan potluck and we try different cuisine every time.
Mm.
And we did Indian food, which was super good. I made whole wheat oil-free samosas and that was really good. And we just did Brazilian night a couple days ago, and that was pretty good.
Mm.
Sort of failed on some things. But it was still pretty good because it's like Brazilian food is. I mean, it's
It's a
kind of
carnivore diet.
yeah, and it's just like not all the ingredients are available, like
Mm,
stuff like that. But we did
true.
pretty good. Like I made their beans, and we had like a dish that was sort of like tomato and mango and stuff, and it was good. And then we've done like almost every cuisine. We did like a banh mi sandwich one, which is super good, which is like that like Korean sandwich. Oh my gosh, am I wrong about that? I think it's Korean.
I don't know. What'd you put in it?
Like really nice marinated tofu and kind of like a cashew pate, that's sort of savory, and a bunch of veggies and like jalapenos and uh, pickled vegetables.
Mm,
Super good. Because
wow.
that banh mi sandwich is like, I guess like the French influence. So it's like in a baguette, but it's like a bunch of Asian food in a baguette kind of sandwich. And yeah, so yeah, it's interesting how that works.
A little fusion going
Yeah,
on there.
exactly.
So you do like to cook? Like you're gonna come up with a cookbook? Maybe you should come out with
Actually,
a cookbook.
I already have it.
What?
Yeah, yeah.
Is it on your link? Do you have
It's
what?
linked under every video. I probably have too many links to see it. It's on my website. Um,
Really?
and I don't mention it that much because I'm not trying to shove it down people's throat. But
Yeah.
it's been great. It sold way more than I thought it ever would. So
Very
I
cool.
don't feel a need to push it. Yeah.
So as far as do you have merch as well?
I have occasionally I do t-shirts. Like I have my Kale Joy t-shirt. I have a t-shirt that's just like an outline of me and my beard because I have like different color beard as from my hair. So I get a lot of it's a joke. It's become a joke and a lot of people get like angry about it and sort of like try and make trolly comments or just get frustrated.
Why?
Yeah, you wouldn't think that people get mad about it, but just people get mad about things that aren't like continuous, or like they aren't what they think they're supposed to be. So like, why do you
That
dye your hair? Why do you do
that's
that?
actually a really interesting topic to talk about, right?
Mhm.
Because when I started my podcast and the YouTube channel, it was matter of just sharing information, kind of like you. And
Mhm.
then I'm really surprised at some comments. Like someone said, told me, this gentleman, he's like, I love this video, this is great, but you really should wear your hair down. You look like a boy.
What? That's
I was
standard.
like,
That's so standard.
wow. And and some of them are like, I thought this was a science channel, and someone's expressing their faith in God. God forbid they express something that you don't necessarily believe.
Yeah, anything you don't believe in. Yeah, and that's the thing in the vegan movement that I feel like I might need to do a video at some point is
Mm.
like just because there's a point that you don't agree with somebody on doesn't mean you should just completely write them off as a person and cut them off as a person because there's no way we're all going to have all the exact same beliefs. And so you're setting yourself up to just cut yourself off from everybody. Like for example, I don't like I advocate like a healthier vegan diet but I still totally support all the people who are junk foodie vegan and talking about junk food and showing people how to eat junk food. And like, I'm not like, screw you, I hate you, and I'm never talking to you again. And I
Mhm.
have gotten that a little bit from the other side of like junkie people to be like,
Mhm.
you're the worst. You're like a horrible chia seed vegan, making veganism impossible and expensive.
Wait a minute. They, I'm sorry, I haven't heard that one. A chia
It's
seed
not a real
vegan?
thing. I mean,
Oh.
what it was is I made a video of like how some ways, examples of how to prevent a deficiency on a vegan diet, or just like talking about sources that you can get stuff from. I was talking about omega 3s, and I'm like, here's chia seeds.
Right.
Get this much chia seeds or whatever is how much you need. And then she who shall not be named, who's an unnatural vegan, made a video responding to me talking about how ridiculous it was that I was saying you have to eat chia seeds to get omega 3s. When obviously you can eat things like flax, which are really cheap. She's saying chia seeds expensive, it's hard to get, and blah 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 blah, which it really isn't, especially compared to the mock meats that she talked about eating. But we don't need to talk about her. The point is, from that, she turned like all of her followers against me, and started calling me a chia seed vegan, or her followers did anyway. So that's just how it works. Yeah. So that's
I wasn't ready for the comments.
oh
I
yeah.
was like, wow, I'm just hearing stories.
Yep. Yeah,
It
you're just
was
listening to like the inside of somebody's head. Basically, this shouldn't be shared. And yeah, anonymity is a dangerous thing.
that is really fascinating. So I've learned, I was in the military, but I
Mhm.
mean, I got a thick skin. It's comical.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I laugh about it.
I like to take little screenshots and share them
Yeah.
on Facebook and say, look what this guy just
That's
called
good.
me
Yeah.
a boy.
Yeah, that's pretty great. I mean, I've had, and then like if I get people making like hate videos about you, so, or like videos getting really angry at you, like the all meat dieter Dr. Sean Baker made a video.
I saw that video.
You saw it, yeah. He's like,
Yes.
"You're a vegan, and you're a fascist, feminized, androgynous sack of fill in the blank," and
Mm,
so funny. I love it. It's really funny.
well, there's a reason he probably lost his medical license.
Yeah,
We'll just
yeah,
put it
it's
that way.
yeah. I heard a rumor that he was getting it back, but I don't know if that's true or not. Um,
Well, you can go to different states, but you have to
mm-mm.
report why. So I have 13 medical licenses across
Oh
the
wow.
United States because I do telemedicine.
Interesting.
And used to do just regular family medicine and stuff, but I
Mhm.
found I can really do what we call lifestyle medicine
Yeah.
as a great way to help people move to a plant-based diet. Like I just did an interview with one of my patients
Oh,
from
cool.
telemed. She reversed her diet, her high blood pressure in 27 days after 20
Oh,
years.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
really cool.
That is
Those are
ridiculous.
just so
That's
amazing
less than a
stories.
month.
Yeah, 27 days. She was like, it was the cutest thing. And she's got so much energy. She's like off the cuff. Like,
That's great.
oh, just so excited. I'm like, calm down. It's probably
That's
great for
awesome.
video.
I mean, I love seeing that. I love witnessing that. I love like when I get messages of like I reversed my diabetes
Oh,
or whatever. It's like,
that's
oh
awesome.
great, now that keeps me going.
That,
For
that
sure.
is really interesting. So, have you had anyone reach out to you that was maybe medically oriented or nutritionist, dietitian say, hey, can you do this type of thing for me, like videos or stuff? Because I would think that you have so much knowledge in the way that you give infotainment, right? It's like information and
Mm-hmm.
entertaining. I think that'd be really valuable skill to share.
Yeah, I mean, I make video. I'm trying to think. I haven't made videos for like doctor people in particular, but
Hmm.
yeah, I haven't really done it. I mean, I just just made videos for like plant-based news and occasionally collaborations with other people. That's
That
about it.
might be something to talk about with the journal when we're done here.
Yeah,
That
for sure.
I might want to
Glad to.
help employ your
Yeah.
services. But as far as when you are thinking about calling people out, because talking kind of this aggressive, not an aggressive tone, not at all. I think you're just speaking truth, right? And
Yeah.
people don't
Yeah.
like truth, right?
Yeah. That's very
So,
true.
but people are going to take it as aggressive or whatever. How do you decide how to tone it or do because
Oh,
it
it's really hard. It's really hard.
yeah.
That's the hardest part. Because like for example, my most recent one was the video about Dr. Mike, who's making the red meat video.
Mm,
Basically, how great red meat was, sponsored by the Pork Board. He claims to be objective by like just admitting that it's a carcinogen, but then he kind of brushes it off as to why it's not a big deal. And so it was like, how far should I go? And at the end of the video, I even mentioned it, like I felt like I might have gone too far with like being ridiculous, but everyone said like, no, it's fine. And so there's
yeah.
a lot of just like really angry, way more hateful people out there that make me seem very toned down. But still,
Mm,
when you're just outright criticizing somebody and what they're saying and what they're doing, it's like inherently a antagonistic thing to do, and so it can definitely come off. And I'm like having fun with it. Like the reason
Mhm.
Sean Baker the all meat guy made a video calling me prick the vegan was because, well, first of all, because I called him out on a bunch of different things. You know, how his testosterone was out of like a
And he's
7
diabetic.
and he's diabetic, has diabetic neuropathy anxiety. And but as a joke, because every single time he had a horrible number, he would make up some crazy physiological excuse for how his body was like transforming into this perfect all meat machine. And so my joke was that he was transforming into a lizard man. So like first of all, that's ridiculous, and it was a joke, but it can be construed as like a direct attack on him, photoshopped him as a lizard man. And so yeah, like in a sense, I deserved him making a response video. He still was like shouting profanities at me and stuff, which is like a whole nother level than what I was doing. It's just like having some, in my opinion, lighthearted, like making fun of his ridiculousness. Like, so I was still making fun of him. That might have not been 100% necessary, but it also was it just like felt like the natural thing to do, as bad as that sounds.
No, actually,
Based on what he's saying.
I say if he's going to be putting this stuff out there, that's obviously wrong and can harm people. I think more power to you. You have the guts to do it. I personally
Yeah,
would not. I'm all the loved one. Come on.
It's also like satire, like that. That
Yeah,
was a
it
little
is
bit of
satire.
satire in that, in what I was talking about. And of course, you can say anything is satire. Like I believe Alex Jones, who just got taken off like every platform ever for hate speech and stuff, was saying that he was. I think his legal argument was that he was playing a character or something, or that it was like had a satirical element, which it doesn't. I mean, he's claiming that he's completely serious in it. And
Right.
so, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on it because I've never really spoken to anyone that that you're making those and actually being. I like it though because we need people in this society not to be afraid to use satire, humor, whatever, to call people to the carpet and say, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
you are a professional." Even though you don't have your medical
Yep.
license, you are still
Yep.
promoting a diet that has been shown to be harmful to patients or to people in and of yourself in denying the labs that you are sharing. You
Yep.
are literally a diabetic
Yep.
by definition.
Yep, it's
So,
crazy. And the same thing, doctor. At the end of my Dr. Mike video, I was like, "Do you really want to be the doctor that is telling people to eat carcinogens?" Like that was my appeal to him at the end. I would like to think, because he took down his original video, as we
mm,
were talking about earlier, and I would like to think that he maybe saw my video and was like, "This guy's right." But I know it was just like he probably felt like he got too much flack from his own subscribers for literally getting sponsored by the pork board. And so I
right.
feel like that's why he took it down, if that's why. Or this is my third theory, which is probably wrong, which is that even just the fact that he admitted it was a carcinogen in their sponsored video was enough for them to have second thoughts and be like, actually, can you take this video down? Because I mean,
Right.
pork, we're talking about pork being a carcinogen. He talks about polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons in that video.
Mm,
Of course, he talks about ways to not have them come off your meat, cook at lower temperature. And
mm,
he talks about how the carcinogens aren't that bad. So
right.
it's, I don't know.
What I really appreciate is that you took the video and you dissected it, right? So you're not saying, oh, just go watch this or just saying the video, but you actually pull in and it's like, here's the evidence right
Yep,
in front
that's
of you.
exactly what he's saying. Yeah, this
Yep.
is him saying that you don't really need to worry about this causing cancer, which
Wow.
is so, and yeah, it's just not good medical practice. It's like, if you're going to give advice, why would you give? I mean, it's like the doctor that gives advice to like drink in moderation or whatever. Like,
Hmm.
it's better for a doctor to say stay away from alcohol than just feel free to drink.
Hmm.
That's just not the best practice. I mean, I guess that's still standard for doctors to say drink in moderation, I guess.
So
So,
yeah, that's the interesting thing coming from my end of it as a physician. I literally changed our diets overnight. And but then I was really surprised because I don't know, maybe I was just naive, I don't know. But as I approached my colleagues and saying, look at this, I have this patient, she reversed her diabetes. I had one to come off insulin in 3 days. I'm like, who does that?
yeah,
Like
that's
we can reverse disease. How
yeah.
cool. And then just to have them brush off like, well, I would never do that. They're not going to listen to me. I'm
Yeah.
like, you have the ethical moral duty to share this
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
information. Um,
So crazy. Yeah, it's so
eh,
crazy.
but then they're dealing with their own,
Mm-hmm. Their own bias.
issues
Yeah.
and their biases and their
Mm-hmm.
addictions, and
Yep.
that's true.
Yeah, that's true. Addictions.
Very true. So, do you have a lot of vegans in your area? Because you said you have a vegan potluck.
Yeah, I have. I kind of live in a little hippie town, and there's like probably 8 or 10 restaurants that could eat at around here as a vegan. And
Wow.
there's just a decent, I probably know like 10 vegans around personally, and there's more. I mean, there's definitely a decent amount. So
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty good. Or people that are willing to eat vegan food. Like a lot of people will come, they won't be vegan or whatever. Yeah.
Very cool.
So I still wanted to get back to that point I wanted to talk about, which was ideas for studies that would be awesome. I'm curious to know what you would think would be ideas for studies on like around vegan diets that haven't been done that you feel like need to be done. If you have any ideas,
Yeah, I mean, certainly have ideas. Did you want to talk about it now or do you want to talk about it after?
we can talk about it now, really briefly.
Okay.
I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
for sure. Yeah. It's interesting. I think when you look at the mountain of evidence, a lot of it, like you said, is disease specific.
Hmm.
I think honestly, what the studies that would be super helpful is there's such a lot of myths and misunderstandings about the actual nutrition profile of someone who eats a whole food plant-based diet.
Hmm.
Okay. So, because there's always like, oh, you're not getting enough protein, you're not going to get enough, this or that. And it's not a perfect diet if you have to supplement with B12. I'm like, it's B12. Most of my B12 deficient patients eat meat and dairy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really not the issue.
Hmm.
The issue is we have really poor diets. When I went to Uganda, I did a medical mission trip 3 years ago. These people eat a plant-based diet. I was in rural Africa, no running water. You had to go to a well. We had tubers and they grew these little cool little purple bean things, and
Oh,
there
nice.
was jackfruit growing wild,
Hmm.
and they didn't have animal products because there was no refrigeration. They might have
Oh,
an
okay.
egg here and there. They didn't have pigs. They're not going to who they don't have enough
They don't have the money.
energy. Right. It takes money to slaughter a pig and
Hmm.
grow it for the one time, and then you can't even store. I mean, you could salt it and all that, but that
Yeah.
costs money.
Yeah.
These people are eating plant-based diet.
Hmm.
I saw 550 patients in 4 days. I had two diabetics that were actually pre-diabetic, but they were a little bit more money. They were
Yeah.
buying
I was about to say they were affluent.
oil, and they were buying a lot of the processed foods.
Hmm.
But the rest of them were infections or injuries or prenatal care. But they didn't have B12 deficiencies.
Wow,
So
that's really interesting.
yeah, and so I
I
think
wonder if
something.
it's hygienic too, like if they get enough dirt in their diet.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure because yeah, no, when we ate, we were washing it with, we filtered our water because we brought filters.
Mm,
But
untreated
these are
water.
the local, they're just eating, they're using the water with the bacteria they're eating.
Yep.
I'm sure there's dirt still left.
Untreated water. I always talk about that study where in most of the lakes they looked at, in that study at least, there was enough B12 for you, the daily needs of B12 in a liter of water. You're supposed to.
Hmm.
So if they're
Yep.
drinking that untreated water, that's way
Yeah,
more.
that's exactly right. Now, granted, they're also getting H. pylori and other
Yeah.
things in the
Yeah,
water,
those are the risks we
which
don't
I
want.
did treat.
Yeah, wow. Oh gosh. So yeah, stomach gets some stuff.
But yeah, absolutely. And then they actually just conserve water. They use dirt to wash the dishes.
Wow,
So
that's
I'm
cool.
sure there's soil residue. And
Yeah.
so it's fascinating. It really was because I went there as plant-based
Hmm.
and I ate plant-based the whole time.
That's
The
so
local
cool. Where
food.
in Uganda was it?
It was about an hour away from Kampala. So
Hmm.
it was a little village called Namuganda. And we have some friends who grew up. He grew up as an orphan on the streets of Kampala in Uganda, and came to the United States after he met and married an American student there, and has gone back with the dream of creating an orphanage. So they were building those buildings,
Oh, nice.
and we started the clinic. And yeah, it's really cool. What an
Have to
amazing
go on a
person.
vegan tour and eat there.
Totally, totally. Yeah, they do a lot of. There is a lot of smokers, I will say.
Okay,
But
yeah.
other than that, yeah.
Mhm.
But it was just like crazy. You're sitting there, and there's like these 40-pound jackfruits. This is really
Mm,
funny. They don't cook their jackfruit. They look at you
you're
like,
right.
why are you cooking jackfruit? So what I did is I brought some of my favorite barbecue sauce from
Mm.
the United States, and we took it to them. I put it. I mean, I literally only had so much room in my bag, right?
Mhm.
Because we took 1,000 pounds of medical supplies with
Oh
us.
my gosh, yeah.
And so what we did, I was like, I'm going to cook them jack fruit,
Pulled pork, like
pulled
pulled pork.
pork, yes. And they were looking at, so it took us all day. We cooked for around 60 people.
Oh wow.
And I'll tell you what, we used their local breads.
Hmm.
I used my barbecue sauce, and we used their jackfruit right off the tree.
Hmm.
And they were just like blown away.
Yeah, they're like,
I
what?
mean, they're just like, is like, what did you just do?
That's really funny. Well, now if they ever have unripe jackfruit, I know what to do with it.
Wait, oh, and then what's so funny? Once they realized how much I love jackfruit, these little kids, they would run and grab a jackfruit, and it was so sticky
Hmm.
that I don't really do a lot of the fresh because I hate to.
Yeah, you have to
It's
wash
just a
your
lot of
hands
work.
when you're dealing with
But
patients.
they would cut it for me and hand me it, and it was like it tastes
Oh,
like
that's
juicy
great.
fruit. Oh, I know, it's
Oh my
awesome.
gosh,
So
that's what it's inspired by. Juicy fruit is inspired by jackfruit.
was it?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I
yeah.
could see
In
why.
fact, yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Oh my
So you would
gosh.
want to do a study just like showing.
Yes. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. No, it's all good. That was a good tangent. Um,
On the nutritional profile of people who eat a whole food plant-based
mhm,
diet, right? So with the supplementation that's, recommended, that much of the B12,
yeah.
because I really think it's important to say, okay, here's your standard American diet, what they're missing.
Mhm,
Here's your standard plant-based, someone who's following a fairly healthy whole food plant-based diet, maybe a, regular vegan, vegetarian, and just across the board, here are the nutritional deficiencies that are consistent. Is it an omega-3 issue? The vitamin D?
that'd be
You know,
good.
yeah, this is because I don't think that has actually been done to say, okay, let's put an end to these myths about you're not getting enough protein or this or that. And I would think also it would be important to clarify the chronic disease profile. So those patients who are in the study saying this number has diabetes, this has, obesity, their BMI, which has been done, but to correlate it all together and saying
Mhm.
you're going to get an optimal diet, less disease, risk, less, burden of, illness and all the things that come with it. You're missing work and you're all these different things.
Mhm.
Depression, that would be a good one.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's what I was going to say. The study that I have, sorry to interrupt. The study that
no,
I have
no.
on my back of my mind is just doing a really intensive trial where you just take, if you can even do it, if you could get 100 people to do
Hmm.
the whole food vegan diet and 100 people controlled diet, measure their serotonin levels, their dopamine levels before and then after the intervention versus the control, and that would just be so interesting to me, just because of
I think hormones would be interesting, but also I do like subjective measurements. So
the. Mhm.
like the
Oh, for sure.
GAD-7, the PHQ-9.
Yeah,
Are you familiar with
yeah. Some of
those?
those are like surveys of mental well-being.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we use those just as a guide to see how our medical intervention are doing, our
Mhm.
medicines. But what's interesting is I've had many patients come off antidepressants, eating a plant-based diet. And what was weird is I had one that had such a quick response. She actually had started having the side effects of the medication.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was really
Pretty
interesting.
fast.
Yeah, so we had that. We're like, well, we need to stop that.
That is,
So then
yeah.
you have this balance of weaning someone off, and they're feeling side effects.
Mhm.
It's such an interesting thing.
Well, it's a
But
good problem to
yeah,
have.
yeah, absolutely.
I was going to
I
say
would,
though, in terms of deficiencies, there was that more recent study out of Switzerland. Wasn't that many vegans, but that they did not have an increased amount of B12 deficiencies compared to the omnivores, which was for the
perfect.
first time we've really seen that, which is crazy. It just goes to show that just like people are getting it down,
Hmm.
fortification and stuff like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think honestly, if we can put it into, because honestly, what was interesting when I first switched to a plant-based diet, I had these are doctors who went to good medical schools and doctors that I would assume that would take good care of me and my family,
Mm-hmm.
should I need them. But one was like, well, don't you know you need to eat cholesterol? I was like, well, no, you don't. I was like, why would I need to eat cholesterol?
uh,
My adrenal, my liver, adrenals, we take care of those
yeah,
things.
75% of your cholesterol in your system is made from your body.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
exactly. So I will be fine. And then someone else will look, well, how much cholesterol is in that avocado that you're eating? Uh, None, because it's not an
Oh
animal.
man, yeah.
And like I'm like, okay, I think I knew that, but even before I went plant-based, that's the
Yeah.
concerning. Well, that tells me, wow, what nutritional education did we getting?
23 hours on average. That's what kind of they get 23 hours of nutrition training on average from all this.
Exactly. And then so then you just compound it with the myths that
Mm-hmm.
they're subject to, just like
Yeah.
everybody else in the United States.
Yeah.
And
And the
it's
science.
just, yes. So something like that would be phenomenal,
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal, in my
Or,
opinion, as a practicing physician.
mhm. Yeah, that sounds good. Like if there could just be like a full, if you could just get 500 people who are on a whole food plant-based diet, or even better yet, have a before and after. That would be amazing if we can get them all to do it at once. But just do that, do it, follow them, or even just then follow them as a cohort for like 10 years. That would be super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could even do annual, publications to see
Hmm.
how they're doing every year.
Hmm.
And then honestly, I think what would be interesting to see, because I like the social contagion factor of this, is to
Hmm.
see how many of their family members then actually saw benefit.
Yep.
Because that ex, explanation, that when you start having those, okay, now my husband's doing it, now my daughter and her children,
Up to the
that would
next
just be
generation.
really interesting to see
Yeah.
their improvements.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I wish that would be a little bit harder to study for sure, but I would
True.
love to. Like, you could maybe have a questionnaire of like my diet has improved the well-being of my
Hmm.
family. Yeah, like one to
Hmm.
five or something. That could be interesting. But even just like the annual checkup for 500 people, making sure they're all vegan, like getting them to go vegan in the right way, like that can be hard for sure.
This is how I approach that. So when I talk to someone who's, I'm trying to convince to do a plant-based diet, literally in a few minutes, because I only have a few minutes per visit, is I have to figure out one, what their pain point is, and
Mm.
then whatever that pain point is, I consider myself a salesman, a walking billboard.
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
plant-based
There
diet.
you go.
This is what you're going to do to get better. So it's honestly, if we could employ some of those tactics that they do in sales and marketing, I have an MBA, so I learned a
Oh,
little
there you
bit about
go.
that.
That's
So
what you need right there.
it worked really well. And I have quite a few people who, were like, mm-mm at first, but then the moment we start talking and engaging in conversation, one, they know that how excited I get because I get
Mhm.
really excited.
Yeah, for sure.
And that I think is contagious. And they're like, wow. Because doctor visits, mostly are here's your another pill, get out of my office, see you in
Hmm.
3 months.
For sure.
It's not about what can we do to make you thrive? What can I do to make you not have to come back and see me?
Yeah, that's huge.
Yep.
It's huge.
That's how I approach it. And that's what I tell them. And that's been really phenomenal
Mhm.
approach. Ben,
How
because
do you put yourself out of business?
yeah, that's what I tell them all the time is they put me out of business. And it's just honestly, I approach it with love and that's how I do
Mhm.
it. And
Yeah,
I consider them all my children. It's a very
for sure.
motherly
And that's how it
approach.
should be. Like if you're treating people, like if you're taking, from an ethical medical perspective, like you're trying to make people's lives better. You're like when you're sitting on the knowledge and the ability to reverse diseases, like it's unethical to not let people
Hmm.
know at the very least. And that's why I always say there's actually a fourth leg to being a vegan. It's usually people are just like, oh, it's ethics, environment, and health, and I said, or like animal ethics. So it's animal ethics, environment, health, and then human ethics of the idea that you can release or reverse these diseases that are
Yeah.
literally killing people right in front of you
Yeah.
or making their life horrible, disabling them, all these things that it's just unethical to not share with them.
Because many of us who go to medical school, like my daughter's in medical school now, she's a second year. When the reason I want to be a doctor, she wants to be a doctor, and my colleagues is because we really want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just help people by giving you drugs and making your numbers look better, but helping
Yeah,
people in the sense that they live,
for
right?
sure.
So that is how I've approached it, and it's been led me down a great, I mean, and a really cool path. I am curious though. Then, how do you deal with? Sorry,
It's all good.
I muted it, but it still vibrates. Um, how because I don't use the word vegan very often.
Mm-hmm.
When I first went plant based, it was because of the patient and it was an incredible experience. But you grow into the animal ethics and you begin to understand.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Um, but how do you approach that? Because I know you mentioned the word more of a vegan versus plant based, and you've
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that before. So why is that, and how to use it? Because when I say the word vegan, people immediately like,
Oh, for
nope.
sure. I always say know your audience. Like I made the conscious decision to put vegan in my name just to try and normalize veganism a little
Mm-hmm.
bit and make it a little less, because if I was starting a journal that I had to name vegan or plant-based medical journal, I wouldn't name it plant-based. Or for example, if I was selling a product, I might make it plant-based. I'm not sure. It depends. It's who you're talking. Like I said, it's who you're talking to. If you're talking to somebody who is immediately going to get triggered and have a backfire effect from saying the word vegan, it's not. I mean, it's a no-brainer to use the term plant-based, and then especially when you're working from a health angle, and that's where people have said like, oh, if you're using the term plant-based, then you're not a real vegan, and I totally disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a vegan trying to save as many animals as possible, you don't care how the animals are saved, and
Right.
you have to use the term plant-based to get people through the door. Like they might have sort of like a barrier to entry in terms of their psychological, I don't know, biases or preconceived notions. And
Hmm.
so if they're never going to go straight vegan to be vegan, then you have to get them on a plant-based diet. And so that's one way of looking at it. And then I don't know. It's not really not that big of a deal. And like I said, once, like you just said, really, you go plant-based and then you take the meat goggles off. You're no longer part of the system and you can look at it objectively. And then you care about it. You realize you always cared about animals and were just completely ignoring what was happening and thinking it had to happen and all these excuses.
I love that meat goggles.
Meat goggles is what it was.
And what was funny though is I've really learned probably in a matter of talking less than 90 seconds how to get someone off dairy.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, honestly, because the moment I say, no, imagine I'm an adult human, I'm going to go drink my glass of breast milk from a human breast milk. And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Yeah, it's disgusting.
and
Oh,
it's like goggles. It's like that immediate effect, right? I
wow.
love that,
Yeah.
kind of analogy.
Yeah, taking
Very
the dairy
cool.
goggles off. Food
That,
goggles.
exactly. So how do you defend it? Like if you do have someone who's approaching you from the animal ethic approach, so like animals don't do this or do that. How do you say, well, actually, yes, animals do have, there's an ethical component to protecting animals, and how do you
You're
word
saying
it?
if
Like,
somebody's just coming from the health aspect, how do I think
yeah, or someone's just like, hey, you're Mike the vegan. Yeah, well,
about
I'm a, gun toting,
that? Mm-hmm.
go and eat my meat and burgers, and I'm here just like a Joe Rogan, right? So he's like,
Yeah.
I can tear apart the animal. I don't even listen to his podcast. I'll listen to it because Joe Kahn is a friend. I'm gonna listen to that one,
Yeah, because
but
it's
otherwise it just annoys me, right? He's just
yeah,
like, you just.
all the stuff on his stuff on diet, it gets pretty bad. I mean, that's why I just always have the best information. That's where it becomes a debate, and they have already decided you're on the other side. But if you
Mm.
give the most persuasive information, like they're trying to say that vegans get protein deficiencies, then you pull out the studies showing that they have higher free blood protein than omnivores. Like they can't say no, you're a vegan, so that's not real. No, that's in a peer-reviewed journal. That's why I have peer-reviewed research under every single thing. So,
So do you go back to the health aspect, or how do you defend,
oh,
or how do you describe to the
talking about
animal
animals.
health? Yeah, because I'm curious because
Um,
sometimes that's a piece of the conversation, and I'm just curious how you word it because I'm always trying to learn.
For sure. I actually try to use the data whenever I can in that aspect as well. The
Mm.
issue is people always convince themselves that they don't support factory farming and they don't like the idea of factory farming when they actually do pay a lot of money for it. And so usually I'll try and just ask them how often they eat at restaurants and if they always know. And so they just letting them know in a not super attacking way that they're eating against their own ethics. And then I will go to some statistics, like if they're talking about how dairy cows are actually totally, it's an ethical thing to do. I might talk about that USDA paper that found that 97% of calves are removed from their mothers in the first 24 hours. So 97%, that's virtually all. And that's supposed to be more ethical. And that's a USDA paper from the government. And so you can't argue with that. And that's just the nature of the industry, is that cows need to be, and a lot of people just don't even know these things. Like the nature of industry is that cows need to be continually impregnated to produce milk. And that means they have babies. And then the male babies you have nothing to do with. And then it's the veal industry. And just things like that, that
Mm.
people just don't know, or they tried really hard to not think about. And so if
Mhm.
you really put it to their attention, then they can't deny it. So
Yeah, that's a yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's there was a where was I? I was on a Facebook group. I think it was I belong to a vegan physician mom group.
mm-hmm.
And there's a veggie mom. I'll have you know there's like 2,000 members in those two
Oh wow.
groups, and which is really cool, right? I didn't even know they
Yeah.
existed till like 2 years
Yeah.
ago.
Like gonna be
And
like vegan ski ballers in South Africa, like 5,000
right.
members.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are like physicians who happen to be female who happen to be a mom. So one of them actually posted that apparently there was a principal of the school. I don't recall exactly where it was. It was in this country,
Mm-hmm.
the United States. And they actually had a teacher. They said it was like the whole school. And they were in this presentation and they were talking about animals and how cool they were. And all these little kids are so excited. It was like an elementary school age. And they were feeding animals and how
Yeah.
awesome it was. And they loved animals. And then they just showed some not graphic clips, but some clips of animal agriculture. And
Mm-hmm.
apparently the teacher was being very factual. saying, okay, this is this. And suddenly, everybody toned down and she started probing and asking questions. And
This is a vegan person giving a
this is
presentation.
yes, at a regular school.
Yeah.
Okay, because the principal's vegan, newly vegan,
Oh,
and it encouraged this.
wow.
So apparently, when they went to lunch and they measured how much they normally ate, like the different meats and stuff that were offered in this cafeteria, it dropped like 75%.
Yeah, I don't blame it. Yeah,
It
kids, because
wasn't
we've done everything we
amazing.
can to separate what's on the plate from where it comes from. And so,
That would be a good study too. What happens when you take children and actually show them the facts of where their food's coming from? Kids absorb everything,
yeah.
and what happens in their dietary pattern?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. That would not be an easy study to do in terms of parental consent, but
But it would be fascinating. Or you could even do it on a college campus.
yeah, for sure. Like all
Yeah,
kids, yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, just letting people know.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, this is amazing. I do have a question I always ask all the guests is what one bit of advice would you give to someone who's considering switching themselves to either vegan or whole food plant-based diet? Like what is like maybe one obstacle that you've overcome or seen people do, or one bit of a scientific evidence or anything that you like?
I would just say right off the bat, replace the dense. You have to think about how you're taking out dense animal products, and you have to think a little bit about calories. Like as much as people hate doing that, and how dangerous it can be for like eating disorders, it's just if you're when you're removing your four most dense sources of calories, which is why they're hard for people to remove. I mean, no one can't get rid of like bone broth or something because that has like no calories in it. But when you're looking at cheeses, which are super high fat, you're looking at high fat meats, you're looking at all of those things, you have to think about how many calories you're taking out and then replace them. Otherwise you'll be hungry and you'll slip off the wagon. And so if it means going on chronometer.com, CRONO meter, and just doing it's free, tracking your calories for 2 days and just thinking, okay, that's how I reach the amount of calories that I need. I also started a site called plantspace.org that has a calorie needs requirement calculator on it that you can use.
Wow.
I say people can go and start on and see, okay, that's how much I need to eat.
That's your website,
Yeah,
plantbased.org?
I just never talk about it because plantspace.org.
Oh, plant space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's just like that's the big thing. That's why people fail. They don't eat enough, and they start thinking about the joke is they go through the Rolodex of high calorie foods and they go back to the cheeses. It's usually cheese because that's the most calorie dense, I believe, and or fried meat with like breaded fried food, and so that's what does it. And so you gotta be aware of that, and you have to replace it. Whether it means eating more nuts and stuff in the beginning, or like I like my Kite Hill cream cheese because I like it more than cream cheese, and it's actually
quite delicious.
Yeah, it's really good. And so that's one thing that if it means like you going vegan or not, like you might have to eat some high fat foods in the beginning.
Yeah. Sure. I think that's really good advice because I know 7 years ago when I transitioned my own diet and then I started employing this very quickly with patients, I didn't have anywhere to go learn. There wasn't the Plantrition Project, which helps teach physicians. And so I found McDougall's site, nutritionfacts.org. That was about it. And so that's what I learned very quickly was people like, I'm just so tired and I'm hungry. But then it dawned on me they were just eating fruits and vegetables.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're eating out the
sometimes
starchy.
around like 1,200 calories.
Yes.
And yeah, it's great for people who are like morbidly obese, very overweight, and need to lose the weight. It's a way for them to, they'll get enough volume to feel maybe a little bit more full. But then they'll be eating like an 800 calorie deficit, which you can argue is healthy or not healthy for somebody who's obese to the point where it's threatening your life. But but then you can just reach a natural point where you're eating the amount of calories that your body is designed to eat because you're eating the fiber, and the propionate tells your body when to stop eating and things like that, which is the fiber, the result of the fiber. And so I think it's good, but you still have to think about the calories.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that people don't bring out was like, you want to feel satiated and have energy. I think that's very good. Cool. Well, thank you, Mike, for joining us. And everyone, I will put the links to his amazing website and YouTube and everything else. That's wonderful. And I can't wait. I'm pretty sure I have some interesting things that you might be wanting to work out with the journal.
Totally. Yeah, I'd be glad to. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
I will give you the link to the calorie needs calculator so you can share it as well. And plantspace.org is I just have it up there. It's not, don't make money off it or anything. It costs me money.
Regardless of even if you're doing money, it's a resource. You should be paid for the resources that you make available to the world. Everyone else does.
That's a nice
So
way.
that's
Yeah.
how I see it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Thankfully, everyone supports me very well. So
Absolutely. That is
so
very
much for the
cool.
support. All
Well,
right.
thank you again.
Thanks for listening.